The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the vast countryside. Fields stretched endlessly on either side of the winding dirt path, dotted with wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. A solitary figure trudged along the road, his silhouette growing smaller against the backdrop of rolling hills. This was Harold, a weary traveler who had been on the move for days, dreaming of reaching the village he had heard so much about. Harold's boots were dusty from the miles he had walked. Each step felt heavier than the last, and he could feel weariness creeping into his bones. His leather satchel hung loosely by his side, filled with only the essentials: some bread, a small knife, and a canteen of water. If you enjoy this video, please like the video and subscribe for more, and tell me where you are watching from today. I always find it awesome to see where all my viewers are watching from. Let's get back to the video. With every gulp, he tried to quench not just his thirst, but also the fatigue that settled deep inside him. He was determined to reach his destination, but with each mile, it felt like paradise slipped further away. Despite his exhaustion, Harold's heart held onto a flicker of hope. He imagined finding a warm meal, a soft bed, and perhaps even sharing stories with other travelers at the village tavern. As he walked, he thought about what lay ahead. Would he meet new friends? Discover old legends? His mind drifted into daydreams of laughter and camaraderie, images brightening his mood amidst the dusty path he traversed. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Harold spotted movement near the edge of a meadow. Startled from his thoughts, he paused to take a closer look. There, just beyond the tall grass, was a small filly, her coat glistening like polished chestnut in the sunlight. She stood with her head held high and her ears perked up, watching him intently. With curiosity piqued and a small smile forming on his face, Harold took a few steps toward her. "Hello there," he called out gently. The filly trotted closer, her hooves making soft thuds against the earth. She was just as curious about him as he was about her. As if sensing his intended destination, the little horse began to follow him as he resumed walking along the path. At first, Harold chuckled at this unexpected companion. "Well, aren't you brave?" he said playfully. The filly let out a soft whinny in response, as if to say she was ready for an adventure. Harold felt a warmth spread through him as he glanced back at her gleaming eyes. She had a playful spirit that ignited joy within him during such a tiresome journey. Instead of feeling lonely on this long trek through unfamiliar lands, he now had this spirited young creature by his side. As they made their way forward, Harold would pause occasionally to rest and catch his breath. Each time he stopped, the filly would nuzzle against him affectionately, seeking reassurance and companionship. Scratched behind her ears, feeling an unexpected bond forming between them. In those moments of shared company, Harold found himself forgetting about his own tiredness. Instead of viewing the journey as just a means to an end, he embraced it for what it was, a chance encounter that brightened his path ahead. Little did he know that this small filly would change everything about how he viewed this long journey and what lay ahead. As Harold continued along the winding dirt path, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow across the fields. The shadows stretched long, and the gentle rustle of leaves accompanied him as he walked. Just when he thought the journey might feel too lonely and tiresome, something caught his eye near the edge of a meadow. Emerging from behind a cluster of wildflowers, a small filly clumsily trotted into view. Her coat sparkled like polished chestnut, glinting in the sunlight, and her mane danced in the breeze. The filly took a few tentative steps forward, her bright eyes wide with curiosity. She seemed to be drawn to Harold, watching him with a mix of caution and fascination. As she stepped further into the open, Harold could see her playful spirit shining through. Each time she moved, her legs seemed to bounce with energy, as if she were inviting him to join in her joy. There was something about her youthfulness that made him smile. It was an innocent reminder of carefree days spent running through fields without a worry in the world. "Hello there," Harold called out gently, squatting down to get a better look at her. The filly tilted her head and let out a soft whinny, as if responding to his greeting. Encouraged by her playful demeanor, he reached out his hand slowly, offering her a chance to approach him. To his delight, she took a few cautious steps closer before breaking into a light trot toward him. Her hooves made soft thuds on the ground that blended harmoniously with the sounds of nature around them. In that moment, Harold felt an unexpected connection forming between them, a bond fueled by curiosity and shared adventure. The filly danced around him in circles, her excitement palpable. Each time she came close, she would nuzzle against his hand or playfully nip at his satchel. It was clear that she was not just following, but genuinely enjoying his company. "You're quite the little adventurer, aren't you?" Harold said with a chuckle as he scratched behind her ears. She responded by nudging him gently and then prancing away before returning again to his side. As they began walking together down the dusty road, Harold couldn't help but notice how vibrant the scenery looked with her beside him. The fields of wildflowers seemed more colorful, and the sun painted everything with golden hues that glimmered like treasure under its warm rays. The burdens of fatigue began to lift as laughter bubbled up within him, driven by the filly's playful antics. With each step they took together, Harold found himself enjoying this unexpected companionship more than he had anticipated. He started talking to her as if she were an old friend, sharing stories about what he hoped to find at the village, a warm meal waiting for him after his long trek, and perhaps new friends to share tales with. As Harold walked on, flinging thoughts of loneliness aside, he realized that this little filly had transformed his journey from one of isolation into one filled with excitement and hope. With each glance back at his new companion trotting joyfully beside him, he felt invigorated by her presence. Little did he know just how much this small creature would impact not only his journey, but also his outlook on life itself. With the filly trotting alongside him, Harold felt a sense of lightness in his heart that he hadn't experienced in days. Her playful spirit was contagious, and as they walked together, he found himself chuckling at her antics. She would leap over bushes with a spring in her step, her mane flying wild behind her, like a banner signaling their friendship. Every now and then, she would stop to sniff at the wildflowers or chase after a fluttering butterfly, only to dash back to his side with a look of excitement in her eyes. "Now where do you think you're going?" Harold laughed as he watched her dart off. A bright smile spread across his face. The way she pranced around him reminded him of children at play, full of enthusiasm and carefree joy. For a moment, he forgot about his weariness and the long road ahead. It felt like they were embarking on a grand adventure together, and he was delighted to share it with such a spirited companion. As they continued down the path, Harold would occasionally turn to encourage her. "Keep up, little one. We've got miles to go," he said playfully. The filly would respond with a quick whinny, as if acknowledging his words, and then surge ahead before looking back to make sure he was still there. She seemed to relish in playing the role of a spirited guide, leading him through the beautiful landscape that surrounded them. The two of them traveled together under the warm sun, with the wind rustling through the trees and the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Every laugh from Harold seemed to invite more lively antics from the filly. She spiraled around him like a playful gust of wind. Whenever she would stumble over an uneven patch of ground, she quickly regained her footing and righted herself, glancing back at him as if to say, "See? I'm okay." Even when she got distracted by a playful breeze or a curious sound in the distance, she'd inevitably return to his side, as dependable as the sunrise. Each time she came back to him, Harold felt an endearing connection grow stronger between them. It was remarkable how such a small creature could lift his spirits so high. As they walked on, Harold began to talk to her as if she were an old friend. He shared stories about his journey, his dreams and hopes for the village waiting for him, and how he longed for friendly faces to greet him after such a long trek. "I bet you'd love running through the village fields," he mused aloud. He found himself imagining how joyful it would be to see her galloping alongside children playing and laughing in the open spaces. Amused by her lively personality and touched by her trust in him, Harold couldn't help but think how surreal this moment was. Just days before, he had felt lost and alone on this journey. Now, with every bounding step the filly took beside him, he recognized that their camaraderie had ignited a spark within him, a reminder that even during solitary journeys, unexpected friendships could blossom when least anticipated. As they continued their way down the dusty road, Harold knew deep down that this little filly would leave an indelible mark on his heart. He felt encouraged by her presence and looked forward to where their journey might lead them next. As the sun descended even lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of orange and pink, he realized that together they were conquering not just miles, but also moments filled with laughter and joy. Something he had almost forgotten existed on his long quest. As Harold and the filly continued their journey along the winding road, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a soft glow over the landscape. After walking for a while, Harold felt his legs start to ache, and he decided it was time for a much-needed rest. He found a cozy spot beneath a sprawling oak tree, its leaves creating a patch of cool shade against the warmth of the fading day. As he settled onto the soft grass, he glanced over at his adventurous companion. The filly trotted up to him with her ears perked high, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Come join me," he said playfully as he patted the ground next to him. To his delight, she trotted closer and nudged her head against his shoulder affectionately, a gesture that melted any lingering fatigue within him. The warmth of her touch brought an instant smile to Harold's face. "It seems I've made a friend who knows how to cheer me up." He laughed softly, scratching between her ears. The filly responded by nuzzling against his arm again. In that moment, Harold felt a bond blossom between them, a sense of trust that deepened with each gentle interaction. Sitting together under the tree, time seemed to slow down as they shared their company in blissful silence. It was as if they had created their own little world, far from worries and exhaustion. After resting for some moments, Harold pulled out a piece of bread from his satchel, tearing off a small piece and holding it out toward the filly. "Would you like some?" he asked with a grin. The filly sniffed curiously at his offering before taking it delicately from his hand and munching happily away. Watching her eat made Harold chuckle again. Her earnestness in consuming the bread was utterly endearing. "You're quite hungry after all your adventures," he remarked jokingly, feeling lighter inside as joy welled within him at the simplicity of their exchange. Once she finished her snack, she turned back to him with pleading eyes, as if asking for more attention. Harold obliged by leaning back against the tree trunk and patting his lap invitingly. The filly settled beside him eagerly, resting her head on his knees and sighing contentedly. Her warmth radiated through Harold's clothing as she closed her eyes briefly. It was clear she enjoyed this moment just as much as he did. With each nuzzle and soft whinny from the filly, Harold felt barriers breaking down between them deeper than mere companionship. They were forging true friendship built on trust and comfort. He began to share little stories about his life before setting out on this journey and what led him down this long path alone. As night began to approach and stars twinkled into view above them, Harold cherished these quiet moments spent together by whispering secrets about hope and dreams into her floppy ears. The world around them faded into gentle murmurs of crickets while they shared heartwarming silence, eventually rising to continue their trek under the starlit sky. Harold looked down at the filly who stepped lightly beside him once more. Each step they took together created echoes of warmth left behind from their brief rest, a reminder that none would ever have to be alone while embarking on a journey filled with unexpected friendships like theirs. With renewed steps alongside his new friend, he realized how meaningful such connections can be when navigating life's many roads ahead. As the stars twinkled overhead, Harold set out once again on the dirt path, feeling refreshed after their brief rest. Glancing back at the filly, who was once again trotting eagerly beside him, he marveled at her determination. It seemed no matter how far they traveled or how quickly he moved, the little creature was intent on staying by his side. At first, Harold maintained a steady pace that felt natural and comfortable. However, as the journey continued, he noticed hills rising in the distance, and an instinct to reach his destination faster kicked in. "I'll just pick up the speed a bit," he mused to himself, quickening his pace and taking longer strides along the path. To his surprise, instead of falling behind, the filly kept right up with him. With every hurried step he took, she matched him stride for stride, her spirit unyielding and her eyes filled with fierce determination. Her legs moved rhythmically beneath her, and it seemed like nothing could shake her desire to keep close to him. "Wow, you've got a lot of energy," Harold called back with an amused grin. He laughed lightly while glancing over at her as she bounded forward and back with joyful enthusiasm. The way she persisted filled his heart with warmth. Despite his rapid strides, it was clear she wasn't willing to let anything come between them. After some time along the road, Harold decided to slow down slightly to catch his breath. He stopped momentarily to take a sip of water from his canteen and caught sight of the filly as she approached him cautiously. Just when he thought she might take a break too, she playfully nudged at his satchel, urging him onward. "All right then," he chuckled. "Lead the way." Her eyes sparkled even brighter, as if rejoicing in being part of this endless adventure together. As they continued onward past shimmering fields and dense patches of woods, Harold attempted to vary their routine, sometimes walking swiftly and other times exploring more leisurely. Yet time after time, he would glance back in disbelief, only to see that regardless of speed or circumstances, there she was, never veering off track. There were instances when Harold thought about how easy it would be to leave her behind for just a short moment, while he rested or even took a different path through inviting terrain sprinkled with wildflowers. Each time those thoughts crossed his mind, gazing into her steadfast eyes brought him back down to earth and refocused his heart toward companionship. Climbing higher against a steep incline further along their journey presented its own challenges as Harold's legs began to tire once more. While he paused mid-stride and contemplated resting again, no sooner had he faltered than he felt gentle nudges against his leg. It was the filly urging him on with affectionate determination. "Ha, you little motivator," he said warmly as he regained his footing with renewed strength thanks to her encouraging nudges. With each step that they took together along this arduous path, filled with ups and downs, their bond grew deeper rooted in understanding and loyalty. The sight of fields upon fields stretching before them offered an inspiring view. Nature sang around them amidst rustling leaves, swaying gently in the breeze, across horizons painted in shades of orange and yellow, from delightful wildflowers below. Through all these moments, from racing through meadows to finding silence where both could appreciate each other's company, the filly showed unwavering dedication by Harold's side, proving that nothing truly matters more than following those who inspire us with patience and affection along life's winding roads ahead. As the moonlight bathed the landscape in a silver glow, Harold began to ponder the filly's steadfastness. He hadn't expected to find such an unwavering companion on his rugged journey, and the question lingered in his mind. Why was this young horse so determined to follow him? While walking along the dirt path, he cast a glance at the filly, who trotted happily beside him, her mane flowing like silk in the night breeze. She was a swirl of energy and loyalty, a blend that fascinated him. What had drawn her to him? Was it his tired footsteps that spoke of a shared struggle? Or perhaps something she sensed beyond his appearance? "Why do you follow me so closely?" Harold asked aloud, almost as if expecting a response. The filly looked up at him with bright eyes and trotted ahead for a moment before glancing back to ensure he was still there. Her vibrant spirit didn't answer his question directly, yet her actions spoke volumes. She was determined not to be left behind. He felt a twinge of curiosity deep in his heart. What had caused this unusual bond? Perhaps she had lost her own herd and saw him as a protector or leader in this vast world filled with uncertainty. As stories of horses finding their owners played in his mind like vivid pictures, he wondered if anything similar had happened here. Harold recalled tales he had heard about animals forming attachments with humans who show kindness. Was it possible that this small creature sensed something in him that made her feel safe? As they ventured through open fields and dense woods, he started to think more deeply about what connected them. Something intangible yet profound. After walking for some time, Harold decided it might be best to take another brief rest. Finding a clear patch of soft grass under the moonlight, he settled down once again and watched as the filly began to explore nearby wildflowers. She seemed truly enchanted by their colors and scents, nuzzling playfully among the blooms as if they were celebrating her joyous spirit. Watching her enjoy such simple pleasures sparked a smile on Harold's face. It struck him how pure life could be, how unburdened by worries animals generally were compared to humans like himself. Yet even amid her playful exploration, she frequently returned to check on him, reinforcing the bond that continued to draw them closer. "Could it be that you're teaching me something?" he mused aloud. "Every time you dance around happily, I feel lighter." This light-hearted comment made him chuckle quietly. It was true. She seemed to revel in life's simple wonders, something he had nearly forgotten during his long trek. With every nuzzle she offered upon returning from her frolics among nature's beauty, Harold realized this little creature brought more than just companionship into his life. It was gentle encouragement that urged him to awaken parts of himself buried deep under layers of fatigue and solitude. He found himself wishing for moments where he could dive deeper into their connection, where stories exchanged between them would flow freely. But for now, all of these thoughts danced around in his heart as he basked in this twilight serenity provided by their unexpected friendship. With each mile they traveled together through darkened paths, brightened only by silver beams above. Harold's sense of wonder about the filly's determination grew tenfold. A reminder that sometimes bonds are formed not from shared burdens, but from pure trust and unspoken understanding between two souls wandering this vast landscape together. As Harold and the filly continued their journey, they encountered several travelers along the winding road. The sun hung high in the sky, and laughter filled the air as groups of people passed by, all on their own quests and adventures. It was during these moments that Harold began to notice curious looks directed at him and his small companion. One group, a family with 2 young children, stopped to marvel at the sight of them. "Look at that little filly," exclaimed a girl with bright eyes, pointing excitedly. "She follows you like she's your shadow." Harold chuckled at her enthusiasm. "It seems so. I'm not quite sure why she's so attached to me," he admitted, glancing down at the filly, who stood with her head held high, proud to be by his side. The girl's mother approached Harold, curiosity shining in her own eyes. "Horses can feel the emotions of people," she observed thoughtfully. "Perhaps she senses something in you, loneliness or weariness, and believes you need her company." Harold pondered her words for a moment. Could it be that this cheerful creature was drawn to something deeper within him? He couldn't help but smile as he watched the filly nuzzle closer, seeking reassurance and connection. As they continued on their way, they next crossed paths with an elderly man who was sitting on a nearby bench, watching the world go by with a warm gaze. He looked up at Harold and his fluffy companion with interest. "Ah, you've got yourself a loyal friend there," he said slowly, stroking his gray beard. "Yes," Harold replied with a nod. "She won't leave my side no matter how fast I walk." The elderly man chuckled heartily. "That's a sign of great loyalty between you two," he said knowingly. "Animals have a gift of sensing our needs. There's an instinctive bond that forms when kindness is shared." Harold felt a sense of warmth swell inside him with those words. As they chatted about their respective journeys, the old man cast knowing glances toward the filly and shared stories of other animals he had encountered in his life. Pets who had followed their owners for miles, or birds that sang for lonely travelers. Intrigued and inspired by these insights, Harold continued down the path, thinking about how each interaction deepened his understanding of animal instincts. He realized how often he had underestimated their connections to humans. This little filly was not only accompanying him on his journey, but also showing him lessons wrapped up in companionship. Further along their route, they met another traveler, a young woman who was sketching landscapes in her notebook under the shade of a tree. Looking up from her artistic endeavor, she raised an eyebrow playfully. "You've got quite the adorable sidekick there," she remarked. "Indeed, she thinks I need company," Harold answered with warmth in his voice. The woman smiled knowingly as she reached out toward the filly, who eagerly leaned into her touch. "Animals stray away from those who mistreat them, but flock toward those who show love," she explained softly, as if revealing a well-kept secret. "You must have given her reason to trust you." As Harold resumed walking after this cheerful exchange, he felt more connected than ever. Not just to the lively spirit beside him, but also to those they encountered along the way. Each interaction added layers to his understanding of their bond, a friendship shaped through compassion and instinct. With every step forward alongside his faithful companion, Harold began embracing the notion that this journey was not solely about reaching a destination, but also about discovering connections, both human and animal, that brought color to life's winding paths ahead. Through conversations shared with fellow travelers and observations about animal instincts, he found himself reflecting more deeply on this unexpected relationship that blossomed before his very eyes as they continued along together, hand in hoof. As Harold and the filly journeyed deeper into the countryside, he began to notice subtle behaviors that hinted there might be more to her presence than just companionship. After several miles of walking together, They approached a gentle slope where wildflowers bloomed in abundance, painting the landscape with vibrant colors. The filly suddenly perked up, her ears twitching as she paused to sniff the air. Harold watched as she hesitated for a moment at the edge of the flowers, her posture shifting from playful to alert. There was a glint of recognition in her eyes, and she seemed to sense something he couldn't. "What is it, girl?" he asked softly, curious about her sudden change in demeanor. The filly stepped cautiously forward, nudging her nose against a cluster of blossoms as if identifying something familiar. As they continued along the path, Harold couldn't shake the feeling that the filly was leading him somewhere important. Each time they came across a fork in the road or decision point, she would pause and glance back at him, as if consulting him on which way to go. At times, she would gently nudge him toward one path over another, guiding him with an unexpected intuition. There was one moment in particular that stood out to him. They ventured near a grove of trees, where the air felt different, thicker with memories, or perhaps a whisper of distant sounds. The filly grew animated again, her tail flicking excitedly as she danced around Harold. It was as if she could sense something lingering in the air that he couldn't perceive. Intrigued, he followed her movements and soon found himself drawn closer to the grove. Beneath the trees, Harold spotted remnants of broken twigs and patches of disturbed earth. He knelt down to inspect them further and realized that it looked like a small gathering area, a place where horses might have come to rest. The evidence hinted at recent activity, but what struck him most was how his little companion seemed to recognize this place with such enthusiasm. "Do you know something I don't?" he mused aloud as he watched the filly explore the area with curiosity. She wandered around the grove, stopping occasionally to sniff at spots on the ground where fresh scents lingered. It dawned on Harold that there may be more than mere companionship drawing her to him. Perhaps she had been separated from her herd or family, and somehow recognized elements of home in their surroundings. What if she was seeking something beyond friendship? Every time they passed similar sights or familiar sights, her excitement would grow, offering more clues about her journey. As they continued traveling through various landscapes, over hills dotted with soft grass and alongside streams with crystal-clear water, Harold took note of how the filly reacted differently depending on where they were. In open pastures, she would gallop joyfully beside him, while in wooded areas, she grew cautious and watchful, seemingly attuned to every sound around them. Pondering this keen awareness left Harold even more curious about the bond they were forming. He began to question whether this little creature was more than just a companion. Could she be an integral part of a bigger picture? Was it possible that fate had intertwined their paths for reasons he had yet to uncover? With each step forward, Harold sensed whispers of possibilities hiding within their journey, an unspoken understanding that beckoned him deeper into reflection. As their adventure unfolded beneath the expansive sky filled with stars and moonlight, he felt a growing excitement for what lay ahead and wondered if together they were destined to uncover truths that linked them both far beyond mere chance. As Harold and the filly made their way through the countryside, the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue across the fields. The shadows grew longer, and the air filled with the soft sounds of evening. The filly, ever alert and full of energy, seemed to sense that they were approaching something significant. Each time they crossed a familiar area, her excitement would build, leaving Harold intrigued by what lay ahead. One evening, as they walked alongside a shimmering creek lined with tall grasses, the filly suddenly paused, her ears perked up and her body tense. She looked down the bank where wildflowers grew thickly, and Harold noticed how her posture changed. There was urgency in her movements. She dashed towards the edge of the water, pausing to sniff at something hidden among the blooms. "What is it?" Harold asked gently, following closely behind her. As he approached, he spotted something peculiar. A few strands of mane caught on a jagged branch, snagged in the underbrush. His heart sank as he recognized this could belong to another horse. The filly moved closer to inspect the area where Harold found the hair. She sniffed the ground, eagerly, and whinnied softly as if calling out. In that moment, everything clicked into place for Harold. She wasn't just following him for companionship, she was searching for her herd. "Could you be lost?" he whispered to her as realization washed over him. There was a sense of protectiveness growing within him. He felt an urge to help her find her family. He knelt beside her as she nuzzled against him, a plea for comfort in her big eyes. "Don't worry," he reassured her softly while stroking her mane, feeling a bond deeper than friendship forming between them. "We'll find them together." With renewed purpose, Harold stood up and scanned their surroundings for any signs that might lead them toward her herd. He recalled earlier encounters with travelers who had mentioned horses grazing in open fields not far from here. Perhaps they could find a clue that would lead them back home. Determined to help his young companion, he started walking along the creek and called out softly into the gathering dusk. "Hello, is anyone out there?" The words echoed faintly through the trees. The filly trotted alongside him attentively, occasionally whinnying back toward the winding path they had traveled earlier. It was as if she were trying to guide him toward familiar territory that held memories of family and safety. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Harold began noticing more signs, a scattered hoof print nearby or broken branches suggesting movement through the underbrush. With every clue they uncovered together, his heart raced with hope that they were indeed moving closer to finding her herd. The tension in the air shifted from uncertainty to anticipation as darkness enveloped them like a comforting blanket. They pressed on through lush greenery, illuminated by shimmering stars overhead, until they stumbled upon an open field bathed in silvery moonlight. In an excited burst of energy, the filly dashed forward into the clearing with newfound vigor. "Wait!" Harold called after her, feeling both exhilarated and anxious about what lay ahead. As she reached the center of the field, she paused and looked back at him with an expression filled with eagerness mixed with hope. Just then, Harold heard distant sounds, soft whinnies echoing from beyond the trees nearby. His heart raced as he followed her into the clearing where shadows danced along the edges of moonlit grass. With every step taken together, their bond solidified through shared purpose. Harold felt certain that he was right where he needed to be, helping this little filly reunite with those she loved most. What had begun as a simple journey now transformed into an adventure filled with meaning. Both traveler and horse were on a quest not just for companionship, but also for connection. A shared experience leading toward something greater than themselves amidst life's winding roads ahead. As Harold and the filly stood in the moonlit field, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The distant whinnies of horses echoed through the trees, sending a thrill of hope coursing through Harold's veins. However, as he turned to look at the filly, who gazed back at him with wide, trusting eyes, a deep sense of conflict washed over him. He felt the pull of his own journey, the desire to reach the village that lay ahead, where warm meals and cozy beds awaited him after days of wandering. It had been his goal for so long, a beacon shining brightly in his mind. But now, here stood this little creature, looking to him for guidance and protection, desperately seeking to reunite with her family. "What do I do?" he whispered to himself, feeling the weight of the decision pressing heavily on his heart. On one hand, he could continue along the path he had envisioned, a solitary traveler on a mission to find solace in a distant village. On the other hand, he felt compelled to stay and help the filly find her herd, a noble quest that tugged at the very essence of who he was becoming since their paths crossed. As he pondered, he watched the filly prance excitedly back into the field, her spirit unbroken and vibrant. She turned to him again, her eyes sparkling with hope. It was as if she were inviting him to join her adventure, urging him not to abandon the journey they had begun together. The connection they had built felt sacred, an unspoken promise between them that he would protect her. Taking a deep breath, Harold felt torn between two worlds. He thought about the stories he had shared with her, the moments of laughter and comfort under the oak tree. Could he really abandon this brave little creature now, when she needed him most? The warmth of their bond began to outweigh his desire for personal comfort. "All right," he said decisively, stepping forward toward her. "Let's find your family together." In that moment, Harold felt an overwhelming sense of purpose surge within him. He realized that his journey was no longer solely about reaching a destination. It was about connection and shared experiences that stretched beyond individual needs. With resolve igniting his spirit, he led the filly toward the sound of distant whinnies that beckoned like sirens calling sailors home. Each step felt lighter as they moved deeper into the field together. The moon illuminated their path, casting soft shadows that danced around them as if celebrating their commitment to one another. As they pressed on, Harold felt invigorated by their shared mission. He instinctively knew this path was right. Helping the filly find her loved ones was intertwined with his own journey of self-discovery. This moment taught him that sometimes true fulfillment comes from putting others first, taking risks for those who depend on you. Harold's heart raced as they ventured closer to the source of the whinnies. He could feel anticipation bubbling beneath the surface as he imagined what it would be like for the filly to reunite with her herd. The love and joy they would share upon seeing one another seemed within reach now. Together, they moved toward destiny. Two souls bound by fate, ready to uncover not just a reunion, but a fuller understanding of what it meant to journey side by side in a world filled with uncertainty and hope. With every step taken in solidarity, Harold embraced the idea that true adventure often lies not in where you go, but in who you choose to travel with along life's winding roads. With a newfound sense of purpose, Harold and the filly set off to find her herd, their spirits high as they moved deeper into the night. The distant whinnies they had heard earlier sparked hope within them, guiding their steps down the winding path that led through the open fields and into lush woodlands. As they ventured onward, Harold began to notice the small signs that hinted at the filly's connection to her family. There were patches of trampled grass where it seemed horses had gathered, and fresh hoof prints imprinted in the soft earth, leading deeper into a thicket of trees. Each clue brought excitement, igniting a sense of teamwork between him and his young companion. "Look at this," he exclaimed one time while pointing out a series of tracks. "I think we're getting close." The filly responded with an eager neigh, encouraging him to continue. Her eyes sparkled with renewed hope as she pranced around him, eager for the adventure ahead. Navigating through dense underbrush required patience and resilience. At times, branches snagged at their clothing or obscured their vision, forcing Harold to clear a way through as he praised the filly for keeping up. "You're doing great. We'll find them soon," he told her reassuringly, as they carefully made their way forward. As they traversed different terrains, Harold marveled at how well attuned the filly was to her surroundings. She often paused and listened intently, nudging him when she sensed something he missed. A rustle in the leaves or a breeze that carried familiar scents. Together, they developed an unspoken rhythm as Harold followed her lead and she guided him toward clues that would help them reach her family. In one particularly challenging moment, they found themselves on a steep incline where loose rocks threatened to slip beneath their feet. Harold felt fatigue rolling in from their long trek, but looked at the determined little horse beside him and drew strength from her resolute spirit. "We can do this," he called out, urging them upward together. The ascent proved tedious, but ultimately rewarding. When they finally reached the top, a breathtaking view unfolded before them. Rolling hills adorned with moonlit patches of grass spread far into the horizon. Just beyond lay a valley that seemed alive with sounds of gentle whinnies carried on the wind. "That has to be it," Harold shouted in excitement as he noticed movement below, shadows moving gracefully across the expanse lit by silver light. The filly perked up immediately, ears twitching in recognition as she gazed down into the valley with renewed urgency. With determination fueling their steps once more, they descended from the hill and made their way toward the gathering below. As they drew closer, distinct shapes began to materialize against the backdrop of night. A small herd of horses feeding peacefully under trees decorated by faint glimmers of starlight. When they arrived at last within sight of her family, emotion surged within Harold's chest. A mix of triumph for helping this little filly and anxious anticipation for what would unfold next. The filly let out an excited whinny that echoed across the valley like music played for loved ones. Suddenly aware of a familiar voice calling back from among them, she dashed forward without hesitation toward her kin. The source of comfort she had long sought after being separated from them. Harold watched with joy swelling inside him as reunions unfolded before him. There was pure love flowing among those horses who embraced one another with gentle nuzzles and soft nickers. It was evident that their bond was strong, a bond forged through instincts and shared history that tied them together through time and space. Feeling fulfilled by this unexpected turn in his own journey, now intertwined with hers, Harold knew that helping this little creature discover where she truly belonged left him richer than any destination could offer. Companionship blossomed not just from walking alongside each other, but also from understanding what it means to help others find their paths home amidst life's winding roads ahead. As the filly dashed forward toward her family, Harold's heart raced with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. He followed closely behind, his breath catching in his throat as he watched her move gracefully across the moonlit field. The sounds of whinnies grew louder, echoing through the night air, fueling the energy within him. The filly's hooves pounded against the soft earth, and her spirit seemed to shine brighter with every step she took. Harold marveled at how quickly she found her rhythm, confidence brimming as she bounded closer to a cluster of horses grazing peacefully under the light of the stars. Each stride felt like a leap toward reunion and belonging. Finally, they reached the edge of the herd, and Harold stood still in awe as he took in the sight before him. A few horses lifted their heads in startled surprise, while others seemed to recognize the little filly immediately. In that moment, time seemed to slow down as everything shifted into focus. Past struggles melted away, and all that existed was hope. The filly let out an excited whinny that pierced through the night air like music. As if responding to her call, several members of the herd trotted over, their eyes wide with recognition as they recognized their lost companion. The sheer joy radiating from these horses was palpable. They danced around her with gentle neighs and eager movements. Harold could hardly contain his own emotions as he witnessed this heartfelt reunion unfold before him. He felt tears prick at his eyes, realizing how powerful and fulfilling it was to help someone reconnect with what they cherished most. The love between these animals was evident, a bond woven through time that transcended any sense of separation. As the filly nuzzled against one of the larger horses, possibly her mother or an older sibling, Harold's heart swelled with happiness. Their bond had been a journey of discovery for both of them. He had not only helped guide her home, but had also uncovered pieces of himself along the way. "Look at you," he whispered softly to himself as he stepped back to give them space. The filly whirled around in glee before leaping onto a patch of soft grass, inviting playful interactions from her family members. It filled him with warmth to see her so joyous and alive, free from worry and filled with love. Yet amidst this overwhelming joy, Harold felt a sense of bittersweet melancholy wash over him. Could it be that this journey was now drawing to an end? His heart ached slightly at the idea of letting go. Their time together had been transformative for both of them. But then he caught sight of the filly turning back toward him amid all her excitement. With sparkling eyes and joyful prancing, she stepped away from her family briefly to trot back toward him, as if acknowledging all he had done for her. "Thank you," Harold said aloud, kneeling down to meet her gaze one last time. "I'll always cherish our time together." The sincerity in his voice rang true as he stroked her mane gently, grateful for their shared adventure. With a final flutter of hope in his chest, Harold stood tall again and watched as she returned to their herd, her rightful place among those who loved her most. He could feel warmth emanate from within him, knowing that he had played an important role during this chapter. Turning away gently from the scene unfolding before him, the joyous cries mingling harmoniously under starlit skies, Harold took one last glance back at the filly frolicking freely among her family. With newfound determination, he continued on his own path once more. Each step forward reminded him that true fulfillment often comes from embracing bonds formed during journeys unexpected yet beautiful within life's winding roads ahead. As Harold continued his journey, leaving behind the joyful reunion of the filly and her herd, he couldn't help but reflect on the profound lessons he had learned during their time together. The night sky stretched overhead, a tapestry of stars twinkling like dreams waiting to be fulfilled. And he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude swell within him. He had set out on this journey alone, weighed down by fatigue and the solitude that often accompanied a long trek through the countryside. Yet, in the most unexpected way, this little filly had changed everything for him. Her presence had transformed his lonely expedition into a shared adventure filled with laughter and moments of connection that resonated deeply within his heart. Harold recalled how, at first, their relationship seemed simple. Two travelers crossing paths in search of solace. But as they navigated challenges together and celebrated small victories, it became clear that their bond transcended mere companionship. The filly had reminded him of the beauty in vulnerability. She had trusted him to guide her home, and in return, he had rediscovered pieces of himself along the way. Friendship can blossom in the most unexpected places, he mused aloud as he walked. The thought hung in the air, like a delicate promise. He realized that sometimes it takes a leap of faith to open oneself up to others, whether two-legged or four-legged, and embrace the connections that come from being present and compassionate. In those fleeting moments they had shared, like playful frolics through fields or quiet pauses under ancient trees, he understood that friendship was not solely defined by familiarity, but by the willingness to support one another amid uncertainty. The filly had shown him the value of being there for someone else, of offering guidance when it was needed most. As Harold trudged onward, he pondered how this experience could extend beyond just his encounter with the filly. What if each interaction he had with fellow travelers or strangers moving about their lives could lead to similar moments of understanding? In realizing this, he felt buoyed by hope. No journey truly needed to be trodden alone. He made a silent vow to carry these lessons with him into future encounters, to embrace every opportunity for companionship and offer kindness wherever possible. Life was filled with winding paths that were often unpredictable. Perhaps it would be through teamwork and shared experiences that deeper connections could flourish with others who crossed his path. Just then, Harold noticed a distant figure walking along the trail ahead, a lone traveler much like himself. Instead of rushing past or keeping to himself as he might have done before, he felt compelled to approach them with an open heart. As he drew nearer, a smile broke across his face as he called out warmly, "Hello there. Where are you headed?" The traveler turned, surprise giving way to a friendly grin. "I'm just trying to find my way," they replied. "It's nice to see someone else out here." As they exchanged stories under the starry sky, Harold felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. A recognition that life's journeys held endless possibilities for forming meaningful bonds along the road. In that moment, he knew that helping others could enrich not only their lives, but also his own. True adventure lay in the connections forged through kindness and understanding amidst life's unpredictable twists and turns. With renewed purpose guiding him forward, Harold embraced each step with an open heart, ready to explore both new horizons and new friendships on his journey ahead. As the joyous reunions unfolded around him, Harold felt a bittersweet ache in his heart. The filly danced among her herd, nuzzling and prancing with uncontained joy, while he stood back, silently cherishing the memories they had created together. It was a moment filled with beauty and connection, yet it also marked the end of their unique journey. The stars twinkled brightly above them, as if celebrating this reunion under their watchful gaze. Harold took a deep breath, allowing himself to soak in the atmosphere of happiness that enveloped the field. It was an unmistakable reminder of how powerful bonds can forge, even in the most unexpected circumstances. As he watched the filly frolic with her family, Harold felt overwhelming gratitude for the time they had spent together. She had brought light into his life during his solitary journey, teaching him valuable lessons about friendship and compassion. Now, as she rejoined her kin, he found solace in knowing that he played a part in helping her find her way home. Suddenly, amid the joyful chaos of reunited horses, the little filly paused and looked back toward him with her sparkling eyes. For a brief moment, their gazes locked, an exchange filled with unspoken understanding and warmth. In that instant, it became clear to Harold that their connection would not be forgotten. It was etched into both of their hearts forever. "Thank you," he whispered softly, kneeling down one last time to meet her gaze. "I'll always remember you." As if she understood his words completely, the filly trotted closer to him one final time and leaned against him gently, offering comfort before stepping away to rejoin her family. With a swirl of emotions bubbling inside him, joy for her reunion mixed with sadness at their parting, Harold stood tall once more. He watched as she pranced back into the fold of her family, assured now that she belonged where love surrounded her. Feeling a flame of renewed purpose ignite within him, Harold turned away from the scene and took a deep breath of the cool night air. His journey would continue toward the village that had long been his dream, but now carried a different meaning. Along this path lay new adventures waiting to unfold, friendships yet to be made, and stories waiting to be shared. As he walked away from the pasture bathed in moonlight and laughter, Harold carried with him not just memories, but also invaluable lessons learned from helping another find their way home. He understood now that true fulfillment came from embracing those connections formed through empathy and kindness. Each step he took resonated with purpose as he ventured onward into life's winding roads ahead. Roadways intertwined by unexpected bonds created during journeys shared along the way. The world expanded before him like an uncharted map filled with potential and promise. With an open heart guiding him forward through shadows cast by whispering trees and beneath skies dotted by stars bright enough to spark dreams anew, Harold felt serene confidence in his ability to navigate whatever lay ahead. He knew that though farewells could stir feelings of melancholy, they also opened doors for new beginnings. Embracing each new horizon with warmth and hope for future connections was now intertwined with every aspect of his travels. A commitment made not only for himself, but also as an homage to that spirited little filly who taught him so much about life's greatest gifts. Friendship and love along life's unpredictable paths.